Player of the Season awards are back at Leeds United, and Leeds admittedly got rid of them a while ago because we were really, really bad. And if we've been relegated, it feels really, really weird to give Tyler Adams an award. It wouldn't have been Tyler Adams. It doesn't matter either way. But they are back. So it's time for our crack team of experts, being me and Evie, to work out who gets the awards for this season. Word of warning, I literally didn't tell Evie what the video idea was, so all of these videos, you're going to have to come up with the answers for on the spot. I said videos, not awards there. It's me that's looking like a tit. So, how well do you think... That was me. How well do you think you remembered the season so far?
Well, I think if my quiz was to go anything by, I think I remember the season pretty well, to be fair.
Yeah, that's sort of why I picked you for this one, because you're like, you can pick out every single goal chronologically. I think this will probably be fine. But first up, we are going to start with the Rob Price Award. Now, this is going to go to the player most likely to be assembled from parts of Sonny Perkins. We haven't seen Sonny Perkins in a long time. That's because I think he's been taken out back, disassembled, and his bits have been given to players that are breaking down. So, the Rob Price Award, who do you think is injured but has been put together the best so far this season? Personally, my nominee for this will probably be like a Georgie Rutter, because we know he's been like gradually a little bit broken, but he's still moving. So, I mean, he can't be that ruined.
Yeah, I like the concept of that idea, even if it is slightly
it's a bit
cannibalistic, kind of, kind of thing. Very like Frankenstein-esque. That's really quite tricky, because you could, up until maybe Christmas, you could have said Strauch, because obviously he'd been playing with a double hernia for most of the season, but then he hasn't really come back since then. So
yeah, they ran out of
like
Sonny
half
Perkins,
a point.
So half an award going to Pascal Strauch.
Yeah, just like the bottom half, because that's where his hernia was, I believe, like lower.
No, because now we're just Frankensteining the award itself. Now we're just chopping the award in two and bodging bits together. And I thought you were anti-Frankenstein, but there we go.
Look, Frankenstein was the monster. The monster did nothing wrong, really.
I thought the people were the monster.
The people but that's Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the people, isn't it? Because it's the monster that didn't actually do anything wrong.
No, as in it wasn't his fault. It wasn't the scientist.
Yeah. Well,
I don't like that this is turning into a literary review rather than
no. Okay, right. Let's go for.
I'd also say there's maybe an argument for Sam Byram, because he's not broken all season, really. He had a little bit.
Firpo, because he was broken at the beginning of the season, came back, went off with a couple of little niggles, I think like after the first Leicester game, and then, touch wood, hasn't gone off for lengthy periods of time. So yeah. This feels wrong. I'm nominating Firpo for something.
We've done it. Yes.
So yeah, I'm gonna go. Firpo is winning my Rob Price Award, because he has been put together with bits of Sonny Perkins and is somehow still working. So yeah.
That's why Sonny Perkins never made it into the side, because he was a left back all along. We just didn't know it until we'd moved his bits and bobs into Junior Firpo.
Don't say bits and bobs into Junior Firpo ever again, please.
Well, thankfully, we get to move away from this award now into the Victor Orta Award. This award goes to the club's best acquisition of the season. We all know Victor very clearly had a great eye for a bargain and good footballers, so we might as well name this award after him. I would have gone with Greta Steinson, but I admittedly slightly forgot his name when I was writing the categories down. So, who's been the club's best acquisition of the season? And I have one nominee, but I'm going to save it until I've heard yours.
This season.
this season, because I know
This
you're
season.
thinking of Georgie Ruta with that, because he was sort of end of last season, wasn't he?
Well, I was thinking kind of like Georgie, Nonto, because of the fact that one cost a stupid amount and the other cost barely anything. So if you level them out, it's about 15 million a piece, which is probably
And they're
about
both
right.
roughly, yeah. But they're
Yeah,
neither
but
like exceeding their value in that case. They're both like where they roughly should be.
now if you go for the entire season, then you'd have to say Ampadu.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go for the second half of the season, considering we didn't see him much in the first half, I would say Gruev, because we've seen in the last two games, the Watford Hull games, just to timestamp it, that without him, we've been really weak in the midfield, not a lot of grit. And but then Ampadu has played that role and centre
Throughout the
back.
first half of the
So
season, when
yeah, and you just cannot take him out of the team. Even without Gruev, we have still managed to get 4 out of those 6 points, really uncomfortably and probably not deserved, but we still
but we've
managed to
still
do
got
it.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas as soon as we broke up that defensive partnership of Rodon and Ampadu, we kind of just went back to flashbacks of last season kind of thing. And it even affected Ampadu's game, because Ampadu, I thought, was having to protect Cooper quite a lot. So I would probably say over the length of an entire season, it had to be Ampadu.
Okay. I've gone for my one nominee is almost entirely based on the wording of the award. I've gone best acquisition, not signed player. I think Daniel
Oh, you're
Farke.
going to go. Oh, okay. Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
I thought you
Daniel
were going to go
Farke's
say.
fair
I
enough.
thought you were going to say Byram then, considering he
No,
was
no, no,
free.
no, no, no. I'd be able to have him anyway because he was still a transfer, wasn't he? But because I don't
Oh,
know if we get to see
that's a
performances
sneaky
without
question.
Farke. It
That's
is
a
a sneaky
sneaky.
question.
That's a
Absolutely.
sneaky
We're
question.
recording 2 videos right now, and you still don't know what the second video is going to be. Of course, I've done something sneaky.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, Daniel Farke. Yeah, you can't really argue about that, to be
Oh, I
honest.
thought you were going to argue about that. I thought that was
No,
going to be okay.
no,
That's fair. Yeah.
no, because without Daniel Farke, obviously, we've seen how amazing Ampadu is, but he hasn't exactly lit the world on fire. He's had back-to-back relegations in his previous teams that he's been at. So it takes a special manager to be able to see that there's a player inside of there and get it out. So without Daniel Farke, you don't have the Ampadu that we know and love. Oh, I hate that you've outthought me on that question.
I didn't mean to outthink you. I thought you would have read the question and been like, "Oh, that's everyone, isn't it?" I thought we were going to get something wild, but I mean, fair enough. Next up is an award that you might see in some cricket clubs, phrased differently: the Batsman of the Year award. And this is going to the player that is so inaccurate that he might just be relying on echolocation rather than looking at the goal and taking his shots. Who are we feeling? And I feel like the comments might not like what I'm about to say because I'm not going to go with Pat Bamford. I think I want to go with Georgie Ruta.
Yeah, I would probably.
Yeah.
He's had more shots, hasn't he? Surely than Bamford this season throughout, because he's played, a good 90% of all of our games. And from your quiz the other day, he had the highest shot accuracy, didn't he,
Yeah,
Bamford?
that was one that
For,
I've got 2 or 3 commenters that are just like, you must be clueless if you want to play Bamford. So I keep dropping little bits and bobs here and there to be like, no. But yeah, I don't. I think the difference is when Bamford misses, it goes into orbit, whereas when Rutter misses, like we're just like, you silly boy, you've missed by 3 or 4
yeah,
yards.
yeah. And you can just kind of forgive him, because when we do win or get a late draw or something, you just look at his face at the end and it's just like a little child that you just kind of want to go like that on his cheeks and stuff in a really patronizing way. So yeah, I'll probably agree. Although, is this just like shots at goal inaccuracy?
Oh, are we counting passes as well? That's a good point. I think because I screwed you over a bit on wording of the last one. I think we'll include passes as well.
Well, to be fair, it was mainly goals because I was also thinking that it could be back-to-back nominations for Ampadu because Ampadu is also terrible at
That's a good point.
attempting to shoot. But I'm not going to be cruel to him because it's really harsh to say he's like the best acquisition, but also he's a bit crap at the same time.
I think that's a bit harsh to everyone in the squad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I just mean in terms of shooting.
Yeah,
like you can tell. Unfortunately, both of our midfielders that started the first half. Well, no, second half of the first half when we were playing with Ampadu and Kamara. Because obviously we started with Ampadu and Gray in the midfield, and then we moved on to Ampadu and Kamara, and now obviously we're at Gruev and Kamara. So I think the midfield don't have enough goals for my liking. So that's the only thing that I wish that we did have more of, and that's probably Ampadu's only real weakness would be that he doesn't actually know how to take a shot, and he's willing to take a shot, so that's a plus and a negative in Kamara. But it's also, he's not very good at it kind of thing, so that's probably why he doesn't do it. So I think overall it has to be Georgie because he's infuriating, but he's too lovable to stay angry at.
I get that. I think that's a good way of putting it because you've confused me on the do I pick Ampadu or Georgie bit, but you've managed to sort of bring me around saying that. I mean, to be fair, I'm still never mad at him no matter what happens, so it's fine. But on the subject of goals, we've got the Tony Yeboah Award for the most how did they score that sort of goal. I think I've got two that I was immediately having in my mind. I have the Bamford-Peterborough one because what the fuck, Pat? You don't do that. And we've got the Dan James one where it's like, so you, for Wales a week ago, you couldn't do this 4 times closer. But that's the halfway line. I don't know which to go with because they're both sort of... And I'm sure there's others I'm not thinking of as well. Like,
I mean, there was Pat Bamford's handball against Rotherham, I think, in the 3-0 against Rotherham, that nobody knew quite how that had gone in. And then there was the Dan James that wasn't a Dan James goal. It was an own goal at the Norwich one. That was the equalising. No, it wasn't the equalising. It was the first goal that got us back to 3-1 or 3-2 at that point. I can't remember
that goal.
So Dan James had just come on, and he was running down the right wing, and he almost ran out the ball out of play, and he managed to kick it, and it went in off the same guy that had scored the opening goal, I believe. And I can't remember his name, but I'm sure it was the same guy that had scored one of the first goals in that game. He then went and he then scored the own goal. So we were all looking at it. I remember watching Joe, and he was like, Dan James has scored. No, he's not. How's that gone in? And that was one of the goals that, and to be honest, the one the other day, the Byram goal, because I don't know whether you noticed, but everybody was looking around has it gone in? Is it offside? And then trying to figure out, is he looking around because it rolled down his arm? Is he thinking it's going to be called for handball, offside? Has it gone over the line? That was, me and my husband were sat and we were just both looking like, do we celebrate? Is that a goal?
Everyone confused?
Yeah. So it's not very exciting.
I'm kind of tempted by that one, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not very exciting. But
this is for how's that happened sort of goal.
So, and
he sort of bit it in.
Yeah, he kind of went all Suarez on it, and somehow managed to knock it in with his teeth. So as long as his teeth were on side, it's fine. Yeah, I'm going to go with that Byram goal.
You've brought me around. I think I agree on that one.
Yes.
That's a really good one. And then we get on to the karaoke award, and this is for the player with the best tribute song from this season. And this is one where you might be really mad at me again. I sort of want to lean Furpo because it's a banger.
It is, but
Ooh.
Ampadu. That is a song that everybody sings because it's so simplistic. Everybody knows the tune from childhood.
Yeah.
And me and my daughter actually sing it every day on the way to school because it's just one of those songs that as soon as you start singing it, even if you're starting to sing the original of Agadoo, it always
You just
turns
slip
into
Ampadu because it's close
exactly,
enough. Yeah.
exactly. So it's just one of those that gets into your head. Whereas the Furpo song, for as much as it's a banger,
You need to
it's not.
think to like
Yeah,
get
and you
into
need
it.
to watch videos of the actual lyrics to be able to sing along. Whereas the Ampadu one, it's fairly basic. The lyrics are good, repetitive, and involve scum, which is always a good thing for making it a memorable song because everybody always remembers a song that has a little bit of hate in it.
Oh, yes. I don't know what the implications of that are, but you're also not wrong. And I'm also really, really, really mad that you've managed to take what I thought was a lock for Furpo and you've killed it. So we're even.
It's just what I
We're
do.
even. You gave Furpo Rob Price, but you stole
Yeah.
karaoke, so that's fine. You may have taken some joy from the world, but that's okay. Next up, the Ordnance Survey Award. I've clicked the wrong thing there, which is for the player that's most likely to go on a bit of a wander mid-match. They've lost their map, they don't know what's going on, and they're most likely to be sort of not where you want them, I think is the best way to put that. And recently, the one player that's come to mind for me is Joe Rodon, because he's very much sort of been like, oh, we've now got a midfield. Am I the midfield? And he'll just go. And I think that's sort
Yeah,
of
he drives with it, doesn't he? Like he runs really, really deep. And unfortunately, without Gruev there to step back into that defensive, kind of shape and give him backup, we've got nobody that'll do that. So it does leave us very open. And considering Rodon's face saves most goals that and shots that we've faced in the second half of the season, it is nervy when he does drive so far up the pitch with it. Now you see, you've gone really
I
sensible.
still
That's a
trust him.
really, yeah. He's the fastest defender, so it's probably a good thing that it's him driving forward. I certainly hated it in the whole match when it was Cooper driving forward because he can't do that anymore. He couldn't do it in his best days, certainly not now. Whereas I've gone a little bit more light-hearted. I've gone for Georgie Rutter
That was
because
going to be my other suggestion, yeah.
he wanders around and he's nowhere to be seen, and then all of a sudden he's got four players around him. He's got the ball, like with Cree's goal for the thingy game, Hull game. He goes past 4 or 5 in the midfield and just kind of is, probably not originally where you want him to be, but somehow he makes it work. So he does go on a wander. He isn't where you want him to be. And somehow he's a bit like Batman, right? Hear me out, right? So
I'm looking forward to this one.
he's not necessarily the hero that you want, but he's the hero you need because he's not necessarily where you want him to be, but he's where you need him to be.
Maybe he's hanging in the rafters of the East Stand as we speak. Maybe that's where he spends his days. He's not training. He's just watching the pitch.
He's probably at the sidelines, like trying to buy an ice cream or something, and getting really excited by 99, and sprinkles and flakes and stuff like that. But yeah, I think yours is a better one in terms of actually football related.
But now I sort of prefer yours because he's also got like assists from left back and weird stuff like that, where he's just like, oh, I guess I'm here now. I guess I've got the ball. There's probably a 60-yard pass over there, and he just pings it. And it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
don't know
well,
why you're there and how that's happened, but sure, go for it, kind of thing.
It's like the Anthony's goal in the Watford game at home for the third goal. We were defending a set piece, and then he's on the edge of our box and does like a beautiful pass to Anthony, and then Anthony scores from it. So he's not really where you think that he would be, especially because at that point he was playing as the 9. So you would have thought that he would be the last man ready to make a break for it,
You'd think
kind of
that he'd
thing.
be in the Anthony spot, but in reality, it's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, we're doing this then. That's no problem.
The thing is like he's always had a bit of a free role, but in the second half of the season, it's been used more effectively because he's not been expected to press. He does press, and he presses very well, but when you sit him behind the 9, he's got a much bigger scope that he can run around and maybe not, wander. I think he wandered too much at Watford, but he was back to good wandering at Hull.
The wandering that works. Yeah. I kind of get what you mean with the 10 thing as well, because there was a lot of the time when he was playing at night and he was still trying to do his wandering thing, and he'd be like sat looking for the ball, and he'd just see Piru, and he was like, "Why are you here as well? This is where I do my thing." And they ended up walking into each other. But you've brought me around to Reter there, I think. I like it. Although I'm not sure how I feel on this picture of Jorginho Reter that we're building up, that he's just like a 12-year-old French boy on the beach that's very joyous at everything he sees, and occasionally he'll be like, "Oh, there's a kite," and he'll just chase it.
He's not. He's a Labradoodle. Like, that's what he is. He's secretly very clever, hides it very well, and also just brings amazing amount of joy to everybody, even when he's annoying and is kind of, gone for a drink and is wet everywhere, and then comes up and jumps at you. Speaking from personal experience of a Labradoodle, not of Georgie Rutter. Just have to make that clear.
Say, if that was your Georgie Rutter experience, I'd be like, I don't know what's going on here, but I feel like we've got a whole new video in that conversation somewhere. Moving on from that one, let's discuss the Young Player of the Year for Archie Gray. In it, it's Archie Gray. It's
yeah.
This.
I think if Joseph hadn't got injured during pre-season, I think it'd still be Archie, but it'd be a much closer. Yeah. Whereas we haven't seen enough of him. It's kind of like, obviously, like 2 years ago, if we'd have had these awards on the season where we just stayed up, Young Player of the Year would have been Joffy. Yeah. Because, he got us over the line in several games, kind of thing, and gave us a few, a few of the few exciting moments that we did have in that season. So, yeah, but it's got to be Archie. Like,
at what point do you draw the line for young player? I think is a good question, because I'm going to have a look at the squad list just to see if I can be a little bit controversial.
See, now normally I would say 21.
Georgie's 21.
Yeah, no, but
no, because he doesn't feel like a young player, does he?
No, I think because isn't our average age something like 23 and a half or 24 or something, so it's a very young. Yeah, I think it's the second youngest next to Sunderland, I believe, is our starting 11 is like the youngest, or it was at the beginning, like about October time. I can't remember if it's still the same now, but I'm sure we were the second youngest team in the league, like in terms of starting 11. So I don't think you can count Rutter. You can barely count. Nonto's probably the only other player that you could really count, because Somerville's 22 now. Rutter's 21. And I don't think you could count
still 20,
else.
But I'd still say of the two, you're probably leaning Archie, aren't you?
Yeah, because
if I really want to clickbait it, I will just say the words Charlie Crew right now, and then I might put that in the thumbnail. But even then, he's only about 90 days younger than Archie.
Yeah,
which is really impressive for Archie, because clearly Crew's got to be a lot younger because the gap in quality is so vast. Probably we've not seen him, so I'm going to assume. But
Because
it's
that's what
just
all
scary,
good
yeah.
journalists and things do, is they just assume things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to write for a football like newsy website, and I was just like, I mean, the stuff that I'm writing is somehow getting picked up to number 4 on Google. So clearly, everyone else is doing the same thing I'm doing, and I know nothing. So I mean, yeah, sod it. We're going Archie, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get to our Player of the Year. This one explains itself. I'm not going into more depth. Who are we thinking?
You see, I think the obvious one from a fan perspective is Ampadu.
Okay.
An obvious one from a stat perspective is Somerville. A second choice to stats like related would be Rutter.
I was going to suggest Rutter on the back of he brings me joy in a
Yeah,
way
he
that
makes
very few
football
other players
happy
do.
again.
Yeah. He's sort of
Yeah,
the reminder that it's a game and you don't need to give that much of a shit. It's fine. You can just sort of chill.
yeah. I think we've all just, especially over the last kind of 2 years, in terms of I was too young and also wasn't that bothered about football when we got relegated and then relegated again. So I haven't, I didn't feel that pain at the time. You know, my dad was devastated, but I firsthand didn't feel that pain. Whereas I cried when we got relegated, and I never thought I'd be the girl that, you know, sits and cries over football. But I cried, you know, and I turned to Netflix and Selling Sunset in order to heal my pain, which is, yeah, don't anybody do that. It's just not worth it.
I wasn't going to recommend it. No.
No. But like I never thought I was going to be that type of person that would genuinely be heartbroken, because even though we'd done it the season before, it just felt different. There was no fight in that team, and it was just waiting. It's like when you know that like a pet's time is coming up and you're just waiting for it to be the right moment to say goodbye, and that's what it felt like last year. So the fact that Rutter was part of that, but then all of you kind of forget, because he played so little, that he isn't tarred with that. Like, we've almost forgotten, because he's been so instrumental and so positive and so happy, and you just can't help but smile when you see anything that he does on social media, you know, like him posing with his horse and stuff like that. You know, like, it's just, you know, you've got to give props to Leeds social media team this year. You know, it's just incredible. And yeah, he makes you realize that football's supposed to be a distraction from the real crap in the world, and he makes you feel happy again. And not many, if any, players did that last year. Nonto did in kind of pocket-sized amounts, but then you were more frustrated with him for just picking up easy yellows by the end of the season. But I also want to give a special mention to Dan James, because I
Because he's
love
sort of
Dan
snuck up a
James.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's so undervalued and underrated in terms of his Leeds journey, and the fact that he came here, didn't come here, went to Scum, blah blah blah, and he's just never complained. I've never heard a single story where there's ever been an issue with Dan James. You know, we heard issues about Cree potentially. You know, even under Bielsa. You know, we heard things obviously about Nonto. You know, there's been loads of players where there's been issues at some point or another, and there's never been anything about Dan James. You know, he's a good egg. And you know, I think him and Georgie, for me, are what makes me really value this team, because Dan James is the underdog, because basically nobody wanted him. You know, nobody thought he was any good other than his speed. You know, what does he offer? Well, he's on
He's actually quite
20.
good. We've just not seen
Yeah,
it.
he's on like 20 goal contributions this season, and we've still got 6 games to go. You know, we've never lost a game where he's scored this season. So, you know, he's offered a hell of a lot, and defensively as well, he's offered so much. Screw it, I'm going Dan James. I'm going to be controversial.
You were
Yeah.
going Denver. I was going to go Georgie. Can we pull a Rob Price and chop them in two and squish them together into one person, and then we'll just
No.
oh no. So
We'll go. We'll go with. We'll
we're
go
not
with
giving it to
Georgie.
Danjini or Jutta. Is that not happening?
No.
This is Dick Fry all over again, isn't it? This is...
Don't. We'll go with Georgie, but Dan James can have an honourable mention.
Okay, I like that. Honourable mention for Dan, and then we'll stick with Georgie. As I'm sure we will see, I'm not sure if you're lagging or something, because you've gone a little bit funky for a sec.
Am I back?
You're back, I think so.
I'm back. Somebody was trying to call me. I'm just going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. That's fine.
Okay, fair.
There we go. Am I back now?
You're all good. Yep.
Yay.
Anyway, as I was about to say, I'm sure you'll all have some opinions down in the comments below, so let us know who you would have given various awards to, whether or not you agree with the ethics of slicing up Sonny Perkins and giving him to different people, who your player of the season was. Like the video, subscribe, even be a channel member if you fancy, and I will see you later. Bosh. I don't know whether we do the talky bit, because I don't know.
Well, I don't know, because it's your talky bit. Do we talk or do we not?
I don't know. I mean, I need to keep the recording going anyway for the second video, so...
I think this bit looks really professional. I think you definitely need to put this bit in.
I think it does. This bit's going
in. Yeah. Okay.
See you later.